Welcome back. Now the first two plugins we're going to discuss from this bundle are the PuigTecEQP1A, I'll move him down here, and his companion EQ, the PuigTecMEQ5. Now both these plugins are from the Waves modeling collection, and that differs from other plugins because these are modelled from actual pieces of hardware. So in this case, the famed engineer Jack Joseph Puig provided his actual EQs for Waves to model. Now model in this case means that they emulate every parameter of the EQ, and not just the frequency elements, but actually things like total harmonic distortion and the hum and the way the transformer affects the frequency response. Now these original hardware pieces were actually unveiled in 1951 and have been going strong ever since then. And the bottom one particularly here is probably the more famous of the two, known industry-wide as just PuigTecEQ. And it's famed for its ability to bring out clarity in things and tighten up bottom end at the same time giving a huge bottom end. And you'll see what I mean when we go through the controls. So let's have a look at those controls now. Now first we'll look at the low frequency section, which is comprised of just these three knobs here. Now this is the boost, that's the attenuation, and that chooses your frequency. Now this frequency is shared between the boost and the attenuation. So initially your question might be, let's say 100 Hertz, how can you boost 100 Hertz and cut 100 Hertz and have something useful at the other end? But the trick is this, what actually gets created here is a resonant shelf. So what is a resonant shelf? Well, interestingly, Wave's own Renaissance EQ plugin seeks to emulate the same type of effect, and because it's got a nice graphical interface, we can use that to demonstrate what the PuigTec's actually doing in theory. So let's open the PuigTec at the same time so we can see the two. Now, you can see the four choices for our low end here are 20, 30, 60 and 100 Hertz. So let's choose 60 on this one, just to make an accurate emulation. Now, if I want to boost that area, let's say, I don't know, 10 dB, make it significant. Okay, I've made a 10 dB boost there. Now, keep your eye on this little section here, this kind of dip where it centers out again. If I grab the Q on here, see how I can control that? Now what I'm actually doing is creating a resonant shelf. Now I'll go to its most exaggerated area, which is there. So while we are boosting 10 dB here, when it comes down the slope here, it doesn't go back to zero, it actually goes under. So it creates a little dip. And the benefit of this is you could boost, say, the very deep bottom here and get a nice thick bottom end. And at the same time, you're kind of dipping out that muddy low mid area just above the deep section. So the result of that can be a really kind of smooth, huge bottom end that hasn't got that muddiness that's normally associated with a low end boost. So understanding that principle there, let's just bypass him, close him off, and we'll have a little play around with this one. Because I'm going to do some crazy boosts here, I might just insert a little gain plugin in front of this whole section here so we don't go too crazy. I'll just grab an L1. Often use that as a attenuator or booster in the path. It's got a nice clean 48-bit path, so that's cool. I'll just grab the out ceiling here, pull it down, doesn't really matter. 10, 11 dB. Okay, so now we've got our PuigTec. I'll unbypass him and we'll play a little bit of this track, which is a hip-hop track by the artist Chase Baker. Okay, first thing I'll do is a nice big boost that we were trying to copy before, so 60 Hertz. Right, so you can hear how big that is. Actually, let's go lower, let's go to 30, get a nice big bottom. Now try again. Okay, now certainly too boomy. But now if I try and isolate some of that stuff out with the attenuation, now a lot of that tubbiness is kind of gone. I mean, the bottom end is still massive, but a lot of that disturbing low, mid and low stuff has backed out. Let's bypass and see where we were. Much thinner by comparison now, of course. Let's pull back this boost. Now let's just wait for the bass to kick back in. Here it comes. Okay, bypass again. Right, so we've certainly cranked that bottom end in now. Now, it's probably too much. This track doesn't necessarily need such a huge boost, but just proving our point, we can attenuate even harder.
repping yours just like I be repping mine.
So the point here is the harder we attenuate, the deeper and more aggressive that resonant shelf is. And it can sound really pleasing to the ear. Like anything, we have to be careful not to go too far because then we start removing parts of the track that we want. But you get the effect. It's quite a different way of looking at EQ compared to standard parametric equalization. So now let's have a look at the high-end section, and we'll reset this by doing that. So we're back to the defaults. So the high-end section of this EQ is a little more complicated than the low end, but it does employ some of the same techniques. So in this case, it's these 5 knobs here: the boost, the attenuation frequency next to it, the bandwidth, and the high frequency selector. Now the thing about this is, let's just start with the attenuation. This is an attenuating shelf. So we've got a choice here, a separate frequency selection of 5, 10, or 20K. And as I said, that's a shelf attenuation. Let's open up the Renaissance EQ again and use that as our example so we can see graphically what's going on. So I'll pull that down there and we'll reset that back to I'll go to that one. Okay, so what we've set up here is a high-end shelf. So we'll go like that. So, and this is attenuating only. Now, just to set it to its most aggressive setting, we'll put that on the 5K. Okay, now let's take out, say, 5 dB. Okay, so there's a 5 dB drop, but what's interesting, this section here is not a shelf, it's actually a full bell parametric type band. So we've got a boost, we've got a frequency selection from 3K to 16K, and we've got a width control. So leaving that up just a little bit, let's do a boost at 8K. Now to emulate that down here, put that one at 8K, and start pushing this up, and look at the graph. So you can start getting some odd looking curves. We're pulling down here at 5K with a shelf, and we're boosting here at 8K with a bell. Now, other extremes might be shelving off at 20K. Now, I didn't actually switch that to 5, as you can see, but it doesn't matter because we're looking at this. So at 20K, the shape of this is going to completely change. Right, so now we're dipping our 8 dB at 20K with a shelf, so that's really only being reflected right at the end of the spectrum there. And now we've got this huge boost here at 8K. But between these two controls, or their equivalents up here of course, you can see there'll be this whole myriad of kind of tonal variations that you can create. And that's what makes the Pultec such a unique EQ and really quite often copied EQ among other designs, because of the pleasant tones it can create with these variations. So let's have a listen. We'll close that fellow away. And we'll reset that back to Unity. So one example would be, as we said, this attenuation at 5K. So that'll be quite a strong attenuation. So as you can see there, it dulls everything out quite strongly. So if you've got a track that's a little bit hard and nasty on top, you can do this sort of attenuation and then put in some spot brightness with this boost section here. So I've done a whole shelf cut at 5K, and now let's, I don't know, even 10 or 12K. Let's do a boost and see what we can get back in. And you can hear the life coming back. We can broaden that. You should never bite the hands that feed you. And I don't know who. Now let's check, do the before and after. I came through, stole the shine like the thief do. Now much brighter, of course. Like police do. Why your face all in my book? Push this. You can read too. Crowd in my space, fake friends so see-through. My man Mano told me how I should greet you. First I say hi, wave by, then delete you. There we go. It's not actually that different to how it was before now. Yet there's this massive cut and massive boost. It's avatar blue and they finding it kind of strange that when the sun shines, every time it move the color change. So I've certainly pulled out some of the bite, but again, as we said, this is not necessarily needed for this track, but just for example purposes. So really that's it for this particular EQ. It's really just got 2 sections. A low section of these 3 knobs and a high section of these 5 knobs here. Now this main section here we'll discuss in the next movie, and I'll show you some interesting tests to see the true effect of that. So that's it for the EQP1A, and I'll talk to you next about the MEQ5 mid-range EQ.